We're in a series called One Verse, and our one verse this week is in Luke 5, chapter 4, and that's where we have a story about a fishing trip. The first friends that were disciples of Jesus's were fishermen. They were not the kind of fishermen who fished for fun. It was their job. It was their profession. They knew how to fish. They knew where to fish. They knew when to fish. Total professionals. But our story begins when Jesus sees an empty boat. Now, before I get to our story, I do have a bit of a challenge for you. It's going to involve a bit of science. I have a pan of water, boat, some pennies, some fish, and I want you guys to guess how many pennies I can put on my boat before it sinks. Okay, do you have your guess? Okay, hold on to that guess, and we'll show you at the end of the story. So let's hear the story of Jesus and the empty fishing boat that becomes full. So Jesus was preaching on the shore beside the Sea of Galilee, and there's this huge crowd of people gathered around him, and they kept getting closer and closer because they wanted to hear what Jesus had to say. And Jesus noticed there was a boat on the edge of the water, on the shore, and there were fishermen there washing their nets. Those fishermen had been out all night, and they seemed to be done. So Jesus stepped into one of the boats and asked the boat owner, Simon, to move it out a little further from shore. Then Jesus sat down in the boat and then preached to the people from there. His voice was magnified over the water. And when Jesus was finished teaching, he said to the boat owner, Simon, move on out to deep water and let your nets down to catch some fish. And Simon answered, the professional fisherman, he said, Master, we have fished all night without catching a thing. But if you say so, I'll let my nets down again. And this time, when he let his nets down, they were so full of fish, they threatened to break the nets and sink the boat. So they had to call in their fishing partners to come help them bring in their haul, and soon 2 boats were full of fish. When Simon saw what Jesus did, he was filled with awe and maybe a little bit of fear to be in the presence of someone so powerful. In fact, verse 9 says, for amazement seized him and all of his companions. That's Bible words for shock and awe over the huge number of fish. Now, in this story of a fishing trip, there's a couple things that jump out. First of all, Jesus is bold. He's telling professional fishermen where to go to fish. Now, that's kind of a big deal. These guys do it for a living. Jesus was a carpenter from Nazareth. What does he know about fishing? Yet Jesus knew where to fish. It goes against reason for Simon to do what Jesus says. It doesn't make sense to him. And also, he could be pretty embarrassed if he does what Jesus says and there's no fish. The second thing that jumps out at me is that Jesus shows us that human skill is not going to stop the power of God. Remember, Simon Peter said, Master, we worked all night, we caught nothing. That was him saying, I did everything I could to catch fish and I couldn't do it, so it's not going to happen. But how many times in our life have we also said, oh, I've already tried that, or that's impossible, or I'm not old enough to do that? Well, I think we've all done it in one way or another, whether it's a home project or school project. We've heard those kind of comments that say, I don't have what I need to do the job. But in this story, Simon respectfully listens and obeys. Now, the last thing that jumps out at me, and the most important thing that jumps out, is that Jesus constantly amazes us with what he says. In fact, the author Luke pointed out something incredible. He said that they were shocked and awed over what Jesus did, for amazement seized him. So what does that mean? Well, I think it means that Jesus can continue to amaze us with what he can do. Are you facing an impossible challenge? Are you looking for a miracle? Do you know somebody that needs something to overcome? Well, this one verse tells us what we need. We need to listen to what Jesus says and do it. A relationship with Jesus is what we need to reel in that huge catch, that miracle, or to even just overcome a challenge. Now, the Bible continues in verse 6. It says, and when they had done this, they caught a great quantity of fish. Their nets began to tear. Isn't that amazing? They did what Jesus told them to do, and Jesus astounded them. All right, how can we apply that to your life? Start your relationship with Jesus now. Relationships start with hello. And whether you have an ongoing relationship with Jesus and you're still talking to him every day, or if you talk to Jesus every now and then, or even if you've never talked to Jesus, I encourage you, start with hello. Tell Jesus you heard this story today and heard how the fishermen were in shock and awe of what Jesus could do when they listened to him. All right, now, let's see just how many pennies we can put on this boat before it sinks. You got your answers ready? Let's check it out. Okay, I already have one on there, so we'll count that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Water's coming on. 12, 13. Oh, you guessed 12. You got it right. Good job, guys.